Literally no offense to anything. They were very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
Disney has cast Rachel Zegler to play Snow White, which caused a lot of controversy because Zegler is Hispanic and the character is traditionally German.
Was Disney's latest attempt to recapture the magic of their animated classics more of a spell gone awry than a fairy tale brought to life? From the moment the production lights flickered on for their live-action reimagining of Snow White, a cascade of controversies seemed determined to rewrite the narrative behind the scenes long before the film ever reached an audience. Whispers of creative clashes, script upheavals, and disastrous test screenings painted a picture of a project teetering on the brink, but amidst this storm of negativity, a particularly intriguing rumor took hold, adding a layer of interpersonal drama to the unfolding saga. Did the film's own leading lady, Rachel Zegler, in the privacy of confided circles, lay the blame for much of this chaos at the feet of Peter Dinklage? Let's unravel the tangled threads of the Snow White remake and the blame game that has become an almost inseparable part of its story.
This would have been a lot better if they, had a strong male along with her, a prince, if it wasn't about socialism, if they didn't remove the dwarves, if they had real dwarves.
They're remaking the movie, they just got rid of the dwarves, okay?
Okay, but what do they call them?
Why would they get rid of the dwarves, though?
Magical creatures.
But they have one token dwarf amongst these magical creatures.
Initially, the announcement of Rachel Zegler as Snow White was met with a wave of optimism, a perceived victory for inclusivity in Hollywood. Casting a Latina actress in such an iconic role seemed to signal a progressive stride, a commitment to reflecting a more diverse world on screen. Media outlets lauded the choice, fans expressed cautious excitement, and Zegler herself appeared poised to become the next big star. However, this initial applause soon gave way to a more critical examination. The very concept of a live-action Snow White in 2024 began to draw scrutiny, as Zegler herself would later somewhat ironically quote a prevalent sentiment. Literally no offense to anyone, but I was a little taken aback that they were very proud to cast a Latina actress as Snow White, but you're still telling the story of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. The core narrative, steeped in tropes from a bygone era, felt jarringly out of sync with the progressive casting choice for some. The idea of 7 dwarfs dwelling in a mine, the damsel in distress narrative, and other elements of the classic tale were viewed by some as outdated, even problematic. Suddenly, Rachel Zegler, initially celebrated as a symbol of progress, found herself navigating a backlash against the very project she was fronting, caught in a whirlwind of conflicting expectations and criticisms.
You actually just went backwards. You actually just erased the dwarfism side of it. The disability, like we're a disability group, you just erased that whole image.
The simmering discontent truly boiled over when Peter Dinklage, a respected actor known for his advocacy for authentic representation, entered the public discourse. Dinklage, with his characteristic directness, didn't sugarcoat his concerns. He openly questioned Disney's celebratory tone around diverse casting, while in his view perpetuating potentially harmful stereotypes through the depiction of the 7 dwarfs. They're remaking the movie and they just got rid of the dwarfs? Dinklage questioned, his statement laced with both incredulity and pointed critique. His commentary struck a nerve because it tapped into a long-standing and crucial conversation within the entertainment industry, the responsibility of Hollywood to move beyond tokenism and actively dismantle harmful representations of marginalized communities. Dinklage's perspective resonated with many who felt that true progress wasn't just about diverse casting, but about fundamentally rethinking outdated narratives and stereotypes. Disney, who likely anticipated praise for their casting choice, found themselves facing a complex public relations challenge. They were now tasked with balancing the reverence for a beloved animated film with the imperative to address contemporary sensitivities around representation, all while trying to avoid alienating either nostalgic fans or those advocating for more inclusive storytelling.
Argument should have been from Peter Dinklage. There's power of being on TV, there's power of television, and to put 7 people with dwarfism on camera in a major Disney movie, there's still power there.
Peter Dinklage's critique acted as a catalyst, igniting a full-blown social media firestorm. Online platforms became battlegrounds with passionate debates erupting between those who applauded Dinklage for speaking out and those who felt he was unfairly targeting a cherished fairy tale. Media outlets amplified the controversy, dissecting every nuance of Dinklage's statements and Disney's increasingly defensive posture. Behind the closed doors of the production, chaos reportedly ensued. Whispers began circulating about frantic script rewrites, emergency meetings, and a palpable sense of panic within the studio. Insiders described a production in disarray, desperately attempting to course correct in real time, grappling with how to handle the dwarf characters, whether to minimize their role, reimagine them entirely, or even excise them altogether. Further fueling the sense of instability were claims that some of these rewrites were a direct knee-jerk reaction to the studio's anxieties surrounding Dinklage's public criticisms. Amidst this turbulent environment, Rachel Zegler found herself increasingly isolated. Caught in the crossfire of a creative and public relations crisis, she was tasked with embodying a character in a story that was rapidly evolving, its very essence being debated and reshaped under immense public pressure, leaving her in a precarious position as the face of a project struggling to find its footing.
If the story is offensive, change the story, don't change the characters.
As the Snow White production limped towards post-production, the initial glimpses offered to test audiences only intensified the sense of impending doom. Early test screenings reportedly yielded overwhelmingly negative reactions. Audiences described a film struggling with an inconsistent tone, awkwardly juxtaposing moments of forced contemporary messaging with attempts at nostalgic reverence for the original animation. The storyline felt fractured and disjointed, the attempts at modernization often coming across as heavy-handed and lacking in subtlety. Crucially, many viewers felt the film had lost the whimsical heart and magical charm that made the original Snow White so enduring. This wave of negative feedback solidified the growing perception of a troubled production. The label Snow White Disaster began to gain traction, spreading rapidly across social media and entertainment news outlets. Headlines declared the film a lost cause. Comparisons were drawn to the underwhelming box office performance of Disney's live-action Little Mermaid remake, and anxieties mounted about the studio's overall strategy of reimagining classic animated properties. The shadow of potential financial losses and critical failure loomed large, casting a pall over the already beleaguered Snow White project.
That controversy is being compared to Halle Bailey's Little Mermaid, which did lose $50 million, making only $555 million in a budget of $250 million.
It was against this backdrop of mounting negativity that the rumor mill truly kicked into high gear, churning out a particularly sensational claim. Unsubstantiated reports began to surface, alleging that Rachel Zegler, in private conversations with confidants, was expressing frustration and resentment towards Peter Dinklage, reportedly blaming him for exacerbating the film's already precarious situation. According to these whispers, Zegler believed that Dinklage's initial criticisms had triggered the chaotic rewrites and the subsequent studio panic, which in turn fundamentally altered the film's intended tone and narrative coherence. This, the rumors suggested, had not only compromised the overall quality of the movie, but had also negatively impacted her own performance, making it appear inconsistent within the revised and disjointed storyline. Was there any validity to these claims? Some observers found Zegler's supposed frustration understandable, arguing that the intense and often polarizing focus on the dwarf representation issue had unfairly overshadowed all other aspects of the film, preemptively condemning it before it even had a chance to be judged on its own merits. Conversely, critics of this perspective pointed to the broader, more fundamental issues identified in the negative test screenings: the tonal inconsistencies, the forced messaging, the lack of fairytale magic, arguing that Dinklage's comments, while impactful, were merely a catalyst, not the primary cause of the film's perceived shortcomings. The debate over blame and responsibility intensified, adding another layer of intrigue and controversy to the already complex Snow White saga.
Peter Dinklage comes into this as when Rachel Zegler was cast, he laughed at Disney saying it's fake progressivism. The reason being that Peter Dinklage, who does have achondroplasia, finds the depiction of the Seven Dwarfs very offensive.
In the face of these swirling rumors and intensifying public scrutiny, the Hollywood establishment largely adopted a posture of cautious silence. Industry insiders, when pressed for comment on the alleged Zegler-Dinklage rift, tended to downplay the gossip, often characterizing it as an oversimplification of a far more intricate and multifaceted production breakdown. They suggested that while tensions and disagreements were undoubtedly part of the creative process, attributing the entire disaster to a single individual's comments was reductive and inaccurate. Peter Dinklage himself maintained a conspicuous public silence, refraining from commenting on the film's unfolding controversies or the rumors of Zegler's alleged blame. Rachel Zegler, meanwhile, remained in the unenviable position of having to navigate press engagements and social media interactions while the narrative surrounding her film spiraled further into negativity. Her public statements were carefully calibrated, often hinting at creative differences and production challenges without explicitly addressing the Dinklage rumors. The central questions lingered. Was Peter Dinklage truly the architect of this perceived cinematic catastrophe? Or was he simply a convenient lightning rod, attracting blame for deeper, more systemic problems within the production and within Disney's evolving approach to its iconic animated legacy?
Peter Dinklage said that Disney casting Rachel Zegler is their way to feel good about themselves while ignoring a much bigger problem.
Regardless of the ultimate apportionment of blame, the Snow White saga has undeniably become a cautionary tale, sending reverberations throughout Hollywood and beyond. It serves as a stark reminder of the delicate and precarious balance studios must strike when venturing into the territory of reimagining beloved and culturally significant stories for contemporary audiences. The inherent tension between honoring the legacy of classic narratives and responding to evolving modern values, between striving for authentic storytelling and navigating the minefield of perceived wokeness, has been laid bare. The Snow White experience has prompted industry-wide introspection, forcing studios to reevaluate their strategies for handling remakes and adaptations in an era of heightened sensitivity and intense public discourse. Intriguingly, amidst the fallout, whispers of a second Snow White remake have begun to circulate, with the name of Jenna Ortega being floated as a potential lead, perhaps signaling a desire within Disney to essentially reboot the concept, offering a clean slate and a fresh creative direction in the wake of the perceived disaster.
Peter Dinklage was criticized by some actors with similar conditions, like Dylan Postl said Peter Dinklage was being selfish and that community needs more work.
The Snow White saga also throws a harsh spotlight on the increasingly precarious position of actors, particularly those leading high-profile, scrutinized projects. Rachel Zegler, still relatively early in her career, found herself not just embodying a beloved character, but also becoming the public face of a production mired in controversy from almost inception. The rumored blame placed on Peter Dinklage, whether factual or not, underscores the immense pressure actors now face to navigate not only creative demands, but also the volatile landscape of public opinion and online discourse. In an era where every comment, every interview snippet can be dissected and amplified across social media, actors are walking a tightrope. Speaking out on issues they care about, as Dinklage did, can be lauded for its authenticity and courage, yet simultaneously trigger unintended consequences, potentially impacting the very projects they critique. For Zegler, the experience likely served as a baptism by fire in the Hollywood spotlight, forcing her to learn, perhaps the hard way, about the intricate dance between artistic expression, public perception, and the ever-present threat of online backlash. Her rumored frustration, if true, speaks to the very real human cost of these high-stakes productions, where individual careers can become intertwined with and potentially overshadowed by the swirling vortex of public controversy. Looking beyond the immediate fallout, the Snow White disaster prompts a crucial question. Will Disney, a studio synonymous with fairy tale magic and cinematic spectacle, learn from this perceived misstep? The studio's future approach to live-action remakes, particularly of its most cherished animated classics, now hangs in the balance. Will they become more cautious, perhaps adopting a more measured approach to modernization, prioritizing a cohesive vision over reactive course corrections? Or will the lure of nostalgia and the pressure to inject contemporary relevance continue to create a breeding ground for similar controversies? The speculation surrounding a potential second Snow White attempt, possibly with Jenna Ortega at the helm, suggests a desire to move forward, to perhaps rewrite the narrative both on and off screen. Ultimately, the legacy of the Snow White remake will extend beyond its critical reception and box office performance. It serves as a potent case study for audiences and industry insiders alike, highlighting the delicate art of balancing reverence for the past with the demands of the present. Whether Disney, and indeed Hollywood as a whole, can extract meaningful lessons from this tangled tale of creative discord and public scrutiny remains to be seen, but the shadow of the Snow White disaster will undoubtedly loom large over future fairy tale adaptations for years to come. Ultimately, the Snow White disaster transcends mere box office disappointment. It has become a cultural touchstone, a case study in the complexities of modern filmmaking and the potential pitfalls of tampering with beloved narratives. Whether Rachel Zegler genuinely harbored private resentment towards Peter Dinklage may forever remain shrouded in Hollywood hearsay, a tantalizing but unverified anecdote. However, the very existence of this blame game, the instinctive urge to pinpoint a singular cause for a project gone awry, has become an indelible part of the film's narrative. It underscores the intense pressures, the intricate dynamics, and the unforeseen consequences that can arise when attempting to revitalize iconic stories in a hyper-connected, hypersensitive world. The original fairy tale of Snow White may possess timeless appeal, but the story of this particular remake is still being written, its final chapter yet unconfirmed. And it's quite possible that the enduring legacy of this Snow White disaster will not be the film itself, but the cautionary tale of creative discord and the enduring human impulse to assign blame when dreams turn to dust.